So for our final session, we'd like to look forward at the future of AI. We'll explore how each one of us can play a role in shaping a new era of innovation and how to implement this technology. To discuss this topic, please join me in welcoming two experts to the stage. We have AI Optimist, Joyce Drohan. And from IBM Canada, we have their Vice President of Technical Sales and Chief Technology Officer, Manav Gupta. Manav and Joyce, thank you so much for being here with me today. And a housekeeping note before we get started, we'll have a few minutes after our conversation for some audience questions as well, so keep thinking about them. I'm kind of excited about this conversation because I usually leave this kind of question to the end of a panel, but we get to look to the future first to begin with. So. When you think about the future of AI, what do you see? Joyce, let's start with you. What does it look like?
Thank you so much. I put my title down as AI Optimist because actually that's what I think the future is going to hold. And I've actually spent a lot of time talking about the positives of what AI is going to bring. And maybe if I just start out with AI being a general purpose technology, so like the internet. So the internet has a lot of problems with it. There's hate on there, there's bias on there, there is fraud, there's crime, but we're all going to use it 50 times a day later today, aren't we? And so because of that, I think that we have to be optimistic. There's always going to be problems when a new transformational technology comes out. And so we just need to be cognizant of them, we need to prepare for them, we need to look at them, and there's going to be new things coming out. So AI, I think the last study that Deloitte did showed that Canada, in a business sense, was only adopting AI, the old AI or the new AI, at 26%. It's pretty low. And globally, it's only 34%. So I think that, who here has used ChatGPT? Congratulations, look, you all adopted Gen AI. Now, look how hard it is to do at work, right? So you've all adopted it now. So I think that that's one of the big things that's going to come out in the next while is how do you look at AI in two ways? There's specialized AI, like our colleague from RBC was talking about around fraud detection and things like that. And then there's general AI that is for all of us and what we're going to be working on. How do we make ourselves more productive? How do we use it as an assistant for what we do? How do we get it to train us, onboard us, all that stuff that makes us not just more productive, but have a better day. And I think the number one use case that they're showing for Gen AI right now is companion and therapy, right? So interestingly enough, these are the things that are going to help you throughout the day when we're doing things either remotely, and you have an assistant that helps you do most of your work. I just wanted to also say that one of the futures of AI is actually also going to be, I worked for the Ontario government for a couple of years, and one of the questions always was, is it going to get rid of our jobs, right? And that's one of the questions that people asked. The future is, it's not going to get rid of all your jobs, but people who use AI are going to eliminate people who don't use AI. That's the tagline for the day. So that's what eliminates people. The ones that use AI will eliminate the ones that do not use AI to do their work.
Okay, so that's an optimistic take with some caveats, but it's still overall optimistic. Manav, what's your take? What does the future of AI look like to you?
Sure. So I'm just going to build on this answer a little bit. But in order to go forward, let's just take a step back. So AI as a term has existed, any guesses how many years? 25. So AI, the term was coined in 1956. It's existed for quite a while. And then we've seen various evolutions of AI, right? AI, the genetic way of training the machine to mimic human behavior. In the 70s, these were the if-then statements, rule-based engines, right? In the 80s and 90s, they became a bit more sophisticated. We started calling them machine learning as a field, right, where we had statistical algorithms. And then we started getting into language processing. We were able to do very simple next word or next token prediction. And then famously in 2017, we had the breakthrough that allowed a more complex sentence and relationship between the sentences to be interpreted as if a human would do it, right? And that brings us to today, which is we're all talking about AI today because a very narrow sliver of AI, known as large language models, that are largely trained on language or text data, are optimized to predict the next token. That's a lot of words to say. The AI that you're talking to is just doing a fantastic job of trawling through all of the humanities corpus that has been thrown at it and predicting the next word just as how humans mimic and do it in our real lives. So that's 101. So at this point, we're all university graduates, and we all know how generative AI works. Okay, so where do I think that this technology is going? So up until so far, since 2022 November, I think the world has seen, I'll say, two camps evolve. There is a camp of let's build the biggest, baddest model that there is, right? The proprietary, also known as state-of-the-art models. And then something interesting happened. The open source world got hold of one of the models. And then we started seeing really tremendous amount of innovation happening within the industry. So small language models, I would submit to you, is going to be the future. So especially for businesses, you're not going to require a fantastically large multi-trillion parameter model to do every task. Whether it's things like claims processing, fraud detection, customer acquisition, smaller purpose-built model that you augment with your enterprise data is going to give you near or better performance compared to a generic state-of-the-large language model or state-of-the-art language model. That's where the industry is today. Next 2 years are going to go, or maybe next 5 years are going to go into what the industry is besotted by, known as AI agents. And I know you heard that term several times. An AI agent is nothing but a piece of logic that's codified into a program with some agency or with some authority to take an action on your behalf. So this absolutely, so this term that I absolutely despise, prompt engineering, is dead, right? That engineering word of that is now encoded into the so-called agent that's doing a task for you. So we'll see the evolution of that. In parallel, what you're going to see is these LLMs, these language models, are going to get better and better. And you'll begin to see an inflection of engineering of intelligence, if I call it that loosely. That is going to merge with engineering of biology. In other words, humanoids. So the next frontier that we're going to see is the emergence or the confluence of tech with biology into these humanoids. But that's about 10 plus years out. So where you'll see from an industry, I'll say enterprise perspective, is purpose-built small language models that are energy efficient, that you can deploy in an environment or a cloud of your choice, where you can safely augment your data within the enterprise and use it in a manner that is auditable, that is repeatable, that satisfies the regulators. So I apologize for the long answer, but that's where I see the industry going.
It's a very detailed roadmap. And so maybe we'll just pick out a few things and unpack them. On AI agents, you I think had a 2-year roadmap, right? We're in the early innings of this. Joyce, what do you think is the potential of AI agents that we still need to unlock?
Yeah, I mean, the potential of AI agents really is here's going to be a piece of code now that's going to learn, it's going to adapt, and then it's going to act for you. Here we do the non-optimistic side where you say it actually is autonomous now. So where are you going to put these things that make it actually safe to use? How do you want to deploy them? We always talk about human in the loop. Human is not in the loop with the agents now. So when I I can't remember which presentation it was, but they said, let's do human in the loop, and we're going to do agents. So the two don't match, and we need to have a way, and the future will have more programs that will be able to constitutionalize agency work, where we can say we're programming it a certain way, and it's a hard line. Because right now, with a lot of machine learning, it just takes the average of whatever it's learning, the pile of information it takes, and it goes, it's number 5, and it's going to be number 5. And I keep learning that until it becomes number 6, or it becomes number 4. And we're going to have a future where for some of these agents, particularly if we use them, I can see the first use case in agents be in cybersecurity. Because let's be honest, most of your organizations aren't working 24/7 to figure out whether or not you're going to be hacked. The Ontario government, I think that there was 2.5 billion cyber attempts a year. That is not, Bob and Amin sitting there looking at when stuff is coming in. We need AI to actually manage that. So that will be some kind of agentic AI. You'll wake up in the morning and you'll see what happened and what actions those AI agents took. So there's going to have to be a huge level of trust and understanding of how that's going to go, and the ability for AI agents to unlock one person working like 10 people. So we talk about these being your new digital colleagues, right? What did your digital colleagues do for you at nighttime, and then you woke up in the morning and then it was working 24/7? So the potential is massive. We're a small country. We're a medium-sized country. And we do need these things to increase our level of productivity and economic prosperity as we move forward. So we're going to have to start embracing it. So that 26% where we didn't even adopt, traditional predictive AI, it's a big leap to get from 26% of using that to now using generative AI. And that's why I asked you the question at the very beginning. You all are using generative AI now. So it's weird when I talk to colleagues when they're using it at home, doing all this stuff, putting their vacations together and everything else, and then they come to work going, we are not using it here. Do you got that? We're not using it, and we're not using it until someone tells me and the government tells me how I'm going to use it. And until I do that, then I'm not going to use it here. And so it's a very odd kind of work self and home self that we need to kind of get over. And if we don't get over that, that 26% is going to keep going down over time. And so agents are a big deal with that. It is not human in the loop anymore. At that point in time, you're going to need to trust that whoever put that agent in there did it the way that you wanted it to go in.
Our work self is not our home self. That's an interesting take.
Our home self.
Manav, what's your take on that?
Okay, so again, let's take a step back. So the Novi Pro's IT Trends report, it talked about 81% of C-level execs have made an investment or about to make a significant investment in AI. So I think the hype is real. So over the course of I said 2, don't hold me to it, 2 to 5 years, I suspect. A lot of how we do work today, especially in white-collar workers where there is a large corpus of text, that's going to change. So, and I think AI agents is such an overloaded term, similar to what prompt engineering was, that maybe it's important to understand what we mean by that. So you have today bespoke programs, homegrown or SaaS or whatever, that do a certain task, an ERP, an HR, a travel assistant, mortgage advisor, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of decision-making and intelligence that's built into that program on behalf of a human, and there's a human that's acting on that. If we were to redefine and redesign it in a way that it uses an LLM, a large language model, with some level of agency or autonomy, and it does a task for us, so in theory, it frees the human up, is an AI agent, very simply speaking. So I think what we'll begin to see is initial decomposition of human task, and then aggregation of tasks to the point that, for example, I should be, instead of doing a Google search, which if you think about it, is such an archaic way of planning a vacation, because all that task is unloaded onto you. But I just have a travel assistant, a vacation planner agent. Here's where I want to go, here are my dates. Go do all the search that I would do. Find the right hotel with the right beach, the right amenities, and so on and so forth. I think that's what we'll begin to see. But you said something really interesting, that our work self and our home self, our personal.
Oh, I'm not going to take credit for that. That was all Joyce.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting dichotomy that exists today. So as it happens in technological trends, the consumer space is undergoing phenomenal advancements, whereas within the enterprise, because of all the things that we all as humans want, auditability, traceability, can you truly tell me that a loan was declined because the AI or the system that made a decision was not biased against me because of my color, age, race, whatever? So I think those are guardrails that we are all going to require. So what we need to understand, all of us here, is that we all need to become AI value creators rather than consumers. Just using a GPT, chat or otherwise, is not good enough. You all have to understand in your own terms, there are small language models available that you can run on your laptops. So we will all have to become some level of value creators so we understand how this tech works. And then we begin to understand why the work self and the personal self are two different entities.
Let's talk a little bit about humanoid robots. Joyce, you're the optimist. How will this help Canadian organizations with our notoriously weak productivity?
Robots in general?
Humanoid robots.
Humanoid robots. Well,
That was one of the predictions, right?
yeah, that's right. I don't know if they'll all be humanoid. So I'm sure you've all seen the Boston Dynamics, dogs and robots that are kind of dancing around. That invention actually came out of when the Fukushima nuclear plant, the tsunami hit it after the megathrust earthquake. And what happened is it something in Japan where they had all these little robots who did all kinds of stuff. No one came to save the nuclear plant. All you had to do was turn some dials, close some doors, flip some switches, and nothing was able to do that. So DARPA actually put out a contest to see who could get a rescue robot going, and actually, without being able to get up by itself, go through terrain, walk around. That probably won't be the first level of robot that we'll be talking about. We already have robots. They do like laser eye surgery. My Roomba cleans up my golden retriever's dog hair on the ground. So there's already kinds of robots, and they will be like various types. And right now we have artificial intelligence, and the next thing will be artificial body. And we'll need to decide what parts of that artificial body, whether it takes a humanoid view or whether or not it needs to. Those rescue robots, some of them took kind of human form. Some of them had like little, rollers like a tractor. Some of them had various ways. I think as humans, we kind of make things that look human because we think that we want to see it that way. So there will be various instances where we think that artificial intelligence will have to take some kind of form to express itself, to touch the environment, to understand what it is. And the Fukushima nuclear plant's a great example. We couldn't go in. No one could go in because of the radiation levels. That was a perfect example when if a robot went in and just turned some dials and flipped some switches, a lot of people wouldn't have died. And so that was a good example of what would happen at that particular time. Some of them just used little pincers and things that turned dials and turned knobs. So I'd say that the future is coming soon. I don't know if it's exactly going to match up with biology, but the part that will is that AI will start to look at how we engineer different types of biology that goes around right now. So that development is going to change who actually is able to own that type of activity.
That's really interesting. I want to talk about how prepared are we really for this future of AI that we've been talking about extensively. Canada has been known to be slow when it comes to tech adoption. We're really good at AI research. The adoption, as you pointed out, could be better. There's a lot of upside, maybe. So, Manav, what's your take on that? Is Canada ready? Are organizations ready? Are humans ready for this future that we've been talking about?
I think that's a great question. So, look, certainly the hype is real. And as an immigrant to Canada, and I love this country, I do think that Canadians in general, we tend to be a bit more cautious. We love our POCs. right? We love to trial. So the scaling of AI and adoption of AI is still in front of us. But a lot of these type of surveys, like the NoviPro report that I talked about, I think those are good indicators that we are now beginning to get serious about this tech, that this is not just a flash in the pan, and that we can absolutely get some productivity out of it. I think the other thing that we are blessed with is a government that is supportive of these type of initiatives. So certainly with the investments in the things like CFAR as an example, the various research institutions that we have, I think that's a good signal that we take this seriously. We certainly have good availability of talent in the country as well. And then, knock on wood, we still have light touch regulation, which is what the industry needs in order to truly get the productivity that we need. So if you assemble it all together, I think the opportunity and the onus is on us as stakeholders and business owners in this room to then determine how can we implement this in a safe manner in our organizations. I mean, you're clearly going to have a small number of large language models because you're going to have some general purpose use cases. But really, you're also going to have a large number of small language models that are going to be purpose-built, specific to your use case, that you can augment with your data, so you can satisfy the regulators, the CISO, so you can satisfy your users, absolutely, right? And then you can deploy them such that the economics of those make sense to you. So that's what makes me quite hopeful about the Canadian business and our productivity.
Okay, a message of hope. Joyce, what about you? What do you think we could all be doing to better prepare for the future of AI as we've laid out?
Yeah, I think that a few of the speakers have talked about this, AI literacy. So educating ourselves, continually educating ourselves on how to use AI, how to better create the prompts that need to happen so you get the best answer possible and the best thing. You can save a lot of time. One of the hot takes in terms of finishing off a prompt that you'll ask ChatGPT is just say, do you have any clarifying questions? So then you force it to actually ask you back. And it says, oh, what's your target audience? What date range do you want to look at? And it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And so you kind of do a sweep question at the very end to actually do that. I think that the main thing in terms of adopting AI in the future is to not always look at the ROI at the very beginning. We all have cell phones and laptops at work now. And if you remember, if you're old enough like me, you remember a time when I actually looked at the first laptop that ever rolled out. It was about 35 pounds. And not all of us got one because it was too expensive for all of us. But eventually we all got one. And no one said, hey, what's the ROI on you? What ROI did you get on your iPhone today, right? So everybody got one because they know that there was a general productivity that it created throughout your organization. AI will be the same that way. And so I feel like it's almost like a little bit of an excuse when people say, oh, unless you give me an ROI, we're not going to roll out that AI tool. And so it's too difficult sometimes at the very beginning because the length of time to find out what that ROI is crazy. It was easier for optical character recognition when people actually read checks and stuff. Because when I was at Deloitte and we were rolling out something for a client, they go, I can't believe it's the accuracy is only 95%. And then I said, the humans were only 70, right? And so the bar was really high to roll out AI. It was actually people wanted it to be 100%. Even though humans were 70. And so it's an interesting thing that we just need to make sure that we're not holding it necessarily to a higher bar sometimes than what current state is. It needs to be higher, but it's not going to be 100%. Like, let's be honest, it's not going to be 100%. But it's going to need to be what we need to move forward.
I don't think we can talk about the future of AI without talking a little bit about the geopolitical environment. And so my colleague, Joe Castaldo, wrote about how, if you haven't read this article, you should, Canada's changing relationship with the US has kind of awakened companies here to the issue of data sovereignty. In other words, the security of their data and concerns about the potential reach of the US on our data. Manav, what do you think are the implications of that for Canada's AI future?
I think that's an exceedingly good question, especially in the current geopolitical climates that not just Canada, but Canada in particular faces. So the Canadian government, as well as many other governments around the world, they're all embarking on what is being variously known as AI sovereignty. Right? It initially started with cloud sovereignty or sovereign clouds, but really the crux of it is If it is data about Canadians living in Canada, consuming services in Canada, funded by taxes that are being paid in Canada for the betterment of the Canadian society, then perhaps that collective knowledge should be owned by Canadians. If you flip that on its head, though, Canada also enjoys a very large portion of academia and academic investment into AI. So I think we have a vast opportunity to take all this data that we have at our disposal and the researchers that we have at our disposal to build AI. I mean, back to my assertion that we all must experiment with AI. So this is our opportunity, right? So rather than relying on closed state-of-the-art models that we have limited access to, that we cannot monitor, that you cannot govern, all the previous discussions around biases and so on, you can turn that narrative around and start using open source models that are smaller, purpose-built, that you can tune with your data and deploy it within the Canadian boundaries, right? That respond to our regulation, that we can monitor, and then we can adhere to the legal frameworks that were talked about previously. So that's how I would start looking at it.
I've been told that we're actually out of time, and unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A, but maybe if there are audience members who want to ask you questions directly afterwards, they can approach Manav and Joyce. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible outlooks on the future of AI. This was such a fascinating conversation. Can we give them a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.